people make mistakes. And that's the other thing that I think people tend to get stuck on too. They get stuck on, okay, you have a misstep or something happens. I mean, unfortunately, in this day's world, it's really, depends on what that misstep is, because other people can hold you very accountable for things you do or say or whatever. But the fact of the matter is we hold ourselves accountable a lot of times overly, like we're too harsh on ourselves. I always say to myself, I'm my own worst critic. I look at things, I'm like, that was terrible. And other people are like, what are you talking about? That was great. So, coaching people through that, I think sometimes, and beating themselves up over things can be very difficult as well.
I agree. And you know what? It's very hard, and I'm going to use an example from something in the past that involves you and I, right? So we're both coaches. Yep. We're both, like I said, we're both have been, athletes and competitive masters athletes. And it's very
the word masters. It's like, I'm old. That's
well, I should say we met when we were masters athletes. Yeah, there you go. I'll use that one. But it's very hard to read the label from inside the bottle. So even for me, I have my own coaches. Because sometimes, even though you're performing in the moment, you can get stuck on what you expect from yourself, and you expect a very high level. And I know, you've seen me in the gym in moments where I haven't been performing at my best, and I'm in my head, and I can recall times where you've helped give me like a pattern interrupt that knocked me out of it.
Yeah.
And let's take a moment. Let's get perspective. All right. And you have to be grateful for those gifts. That's why coaching is so important. And I know, I've done that for you. I remember, you doing a workout.
During the Open, you were one of my judges, I think, during the Open. I can't remember how long ago that was, but it was a while back. Yeah. And I remember that one particular workout. I mean, and my as an athlete is always my biggest issue has always been I come out way too hard, too fast.
Right.
And then I gas myself. So I'm not. And that's another, like I said, you made a great point with saying that, you can't read the label from inside the bottle. It's true. You're the person, you're too close. It's kind of like looking at a painting from 2 inches away from it. You're not going to absorb the whole thing. You have to kind of back away. You have to have somebody else kind of say, hey, what do you think about this? And even in coaching, whether it's performance or athletic performance or mental performance or whatever it is, somebody else has to kind of be there to kind of say to you, hey, why don't you look at it from this perspective? Or why don't you try it this way? I know as an athlete, for me, one of the biggest issues I have, especially other athletes have this too, is, if you have movements you're really, really good at, you're always going to want to do those movements. Right. You're never going to want to train your weaknesses. And that's exactly the opposite of what you should be doing. So if I don't program for myself. I gave that up years ago. I use another person to program for me, which is great because they know, hey, what was the struggle here? What they'll ask me the question, right? What was the weak point in this workout? What happened? Why was your time so screwed up?
Right.
And I'll say, well, no, it was the 150 wall ball in the middle of the damn workout that killed me. And they'll say, okay, so every workout from that point on, or not every workout, but I start seeing that movement a lot more. Overhead.
For me, it was the rower.
Yeah. Rower's a killer.
Rower. I'm short. I'm a little person. It's not designed to be. It's not made for me. It was my. You know what? It's so funny. I say that now because that was my process, and using that as an example. Or any piece of equipment or any physical activity. It was my kryptonite. It was something that could take me out in a workout. And I remember when I decided that it was my shift in perspective. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be the very best short person on the rower that I can possibly be. Yes. So, and that required me, I remember like walking up to the rower and being like, all right, we're gonna have to make friends because you're going to see me a lot. I need to get on this now.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
And then it became something that wasn't, it's when you recognize you have something that's your kryptonite. You can have self-awareness about that. You can change the energy of it and make it a lot less of a problem. And you can even make it a strength over time. I remember in one workout, I eventually ended up winning on the row, which I thought was really fantastic. But that took a lot.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's about, like you said, not avoiding your weaknesses. And I'll say, you were saying that you always came out hot. I remember that conversation, that there was nothing for me as a coach that to tell you about what to do other than you got to work. I think you got to slow down to speed up.
Yep.
And then I remember you really working on that skill.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's one of the things I like about, when you come up with challenges, whether it's mental challenges or physical challenges or whatever, it teaches you something about yourself. And if you're paying attention, and that's the key right there, paying attention, you could pick up a heck of a lot. You could see Absolutely. Where things are going. Right. So, just really, yeah. And
this applies, so if you're someone who would be like, you're listening to this podcast and you're like, yeah, I don't really do that. I'm not into the sports in that way. There's all areas of performance in our life. It's really the same concepts. They apply when we're working on our mindset and something that we, in our heart of hearts, we really want to do and we really want to get better at, but we don't love the fact that we're a little bit weaker in it. It's really about that. It's about some self-awareness, getting some objective observation and advice to help you move forward. And then, managing that mindset, managing how it feels in your body, and then taking the action so that you can build that self-mastery. So that sort of ties back to the CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy. If you want to get somewhere, you start with the mind, you start with the mind and the body. You get your mind under control, that mental fitness, you manage like whatever emotions are coming up in you physically that might feel terrible, that are impacting what's going on in your head. And then you start to take action and move.
And that's the thing, Chris Spieler, I think, said it, he talked about, early on, he's one of the CrossFit, one of the original CrossFit Games athletes.
Oh, good. I love him.
And he talked about training the three-headed monster, right? And I think you got to take this into your life in general. Is you train strengths, endurance, and skill. 3 things you're going to train, and you could take that into mental performance as well. Your mental strength, your endurance. How much can after an hour of conversation, are you done?
Right.
Try to train that. Figure out where your energy points are too. I think that's important, figure out for anybody, I think, in understanding how you operate. Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert?
Oh, absolutely.
Where do you pull energy from? Some people they can be extroverted for a minute and then they're exhausted, and I always say, well, hey, we all have different things, like I said, there are people that get energy from that, and there are people that will get exhausted from it. Right. So you have two different, where's your energy source come from? I have a friend who was a incredibly introverted person. And I remember years ago at a party, where he was sitting by himself, just hanging out. And I said, hey, how you doing? You doing all right? And he's like, I was.
Until you started talking to me.
So
that's so great. Yeah.
But, that's everybody has their own comfort zone. You got to figure out where yours is and then figure out what you need to do to kind of get to where you want to be.
Right.
While having that. Not that you can't change things, but like I said, you have to understand where you get your energy from. There are people that, like I said, go out and they do an hour speech and it's great. They do a great job and then they go collapse behind the stage. Then there's other people who do that hour speech and then go out and talk to the whole crowd for like 3 hours.
Right. It feeds them. I describe myself as an extroverted introvert. So I will.
It is on a spectrum, by the way. It is on it's not linear.
No, it's not. It's so funny too. I'll tell you, this is so interesting. I know a lot of people kind of know what maybe their Myers-Briggs are. They know.
That's kind of where I got my stuff from and figured that out. Yeah.
And I don't know if you've tested yours since the pandemic, but because stress levels changed for people kind of across the board and their nervous system capacity, their energetic capacity changed, a lot of people saw a shift in theirs, and mine was a shift too. So what's funny is I had always described myself as an extroverted introvert. And when I started taking the tests again, I'm showing up more as an extrovert. And I think it's because while I leaned introvert, once I was forced, to not go out anywhere.
Introverted, yeah.
I then started to really enjoy that part of myself and to get more energy and to find and to work with that. And so I do think it's possible to expand your capacity, your energetic capacity. It just, I just won't, I will always need at least some recovery time that's not involving other people. I like my alone time. And I think you're right. It's knowing that about yourself.
It's knowing what where you're comfortable, what you're good at. And it doesn't mean things can't change. I mean, you could certainly change things. I always say humans are incredibly adaptive.
They are.
We could adapt to just about any condition, which is good and bad, I think. But I mean, people laugh at me all the time because I sit in an ice bath every day for about 20 minutes. And they're like, how the hell do you do that every day? I said, the hardest part about that is getting in. Once you're in, you're fine. Once you're in it, and I always say, the thing you got to look for with an ice bath, especially, when it gets down to you have a 45-degree tub or a 48-degree tub, whatever. When you start getting warm again, get out. That's the time to get out. But and I think that's true for a lot of things, is getting uncomfortable being uncomfortable, right? So getting comfortable being uncomfortable is kind of one of those. It comes from athletic performance, but I think you have to do that in life generally.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Even situations that you're not going to like, and you got to go through it, and you got to figure it out and aim into it, steer right into that discomfort, within reason. But steer into what's making you uncomfortable so that you can figure out how to get comfortable there.
Yeah. When I'm working with some clients about that too, I find like some of the other areas, a lot of people, for you and I, being on camera, no big deal. We can talk to people, we can get up on a stage where it's very comfortable for us, and probably has a lot to do with, maybe some of our personality, but also that we've both been doing this for so long. It's not a big deal. I'm often surprised by, even though I know public speaking is known to be like scarier than death for some people, I'm still amazed when I find someone who's very high level who doesn't want to get on camera. And we have to work. A lot of people, it's funny. I forget what college did it, and I'm sure multiple did, but they did a study where they did like I think it was like a Likert type situation where they went out and did a survey. And, I think what was on it, your biggest fear was the question. What's your biggest fear? And then they had all these things on there. And one of them was public speaking. Another one was death. Right.
And public speaking came up way more than death, which is like, and so, and that's another thing. I mean, there's colleges that actually have courses now in public speaking because it's such a, anxiety provoking thing for people. And I got to admit, I think I always share this experience. My first time at a seminar speaking, and I come from a musical background. I mean, I've been on stages my whole life. I mean, since I was a kid, I've been performing for people and doing things, but there's something different about talking than just, I mean, I can give me a guitar or give me an instrument. I'll play it, no problem for 100,000 people. It doesn't matter. But, you put me on a stage and give me a microphone and tell me to talk about something. It's like, that's a whole other thing. That's like, okay. And that's where that imposter syndrome, I think, comes in. That other stuff is like, okay, I'm going to, they're going to all figure out that I'm a total fraud. Right. And you don't, it's not true, but it's how you feel. And, my first time getting up at a seminar was many years ago. And there's probably about 300-400 people there. And it was like, okay, I've never done this before. And I remember just sweating. And I got up there and I mumbled for like the first, 30 seconds. It seemed like forever, but it was really, really short. And then I totally just said to the crowd, I said, you know what? It's the first time I'm doing this and I'm really nervous. And I said that. And I told on myself pretty much. And it was amazing. What happened is the whole crowd erupted in like clapping. And then I just felt better. All of a sudden, I just felt better. And I rolled and probably did one of the, that one of those early ones was probably one of the better ones that I've done, and it was, like I said, it was just because I was able to get through that. But I remember stumbling and getting so thrown off from stumbling. And then I just said, hey, look, I'm nervous. This is my first time doing this, you know, and the whole crowd kind of made me comfortable. And then I just went for 45 minutes to an hour. I just went off on my thing and did my presentation. But it was like one of those things where, you know, I think there's something to be said about that, to tell on yourself, you know, in that situation.
It's the willingness to be vulnerable, to be authentic in the moment. And I think that one of the biggest antidotes to something like self-doubt or imposter syndrome is to be authentic, to let people know where you're at. This is where being transparent.
Hey, I'm here. I'm human, right? I'm here and I'm human, just like you, you know, and I'm trying to do something and you know.
Yeah. Do you know the phrase, and I say this all the time, it's so funny too. I get other experts all bent out of shape when I say it. I hate the phrase, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I think I know the intent upon it. It's like, if you have to fake it to get into action, go ahead. I'm like, yeah. However, it feels fake, right? Like, and that's such a good example, what you're talking about. You got onto the stage, you were probably trying to fake it. And then you were like, you know, screw this. I'm just not going to fake it.
Yeah.
And that's,
I don't think I had another option. I think I was at that point where I was like, I'm either going to run off this stage, freaked out.
People have done that.
And be complete. Oh yeah. And to me, that would have been horrifying to do that, because I'm in front of like, few hundred professionals in my field, and my boss was there. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things there going on. And I think that made it worse, because like all the top executives for the hospital I was working for at the time were there. And, you know, like I said, I had two options. My option was either, look, I got to come clean about how I feel.
Right.
Or I'm just going to, this is going to be a complete disaster. So
yeah,
I ran into that wall.